May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. As I mentioned at the beginning, in this series, we will learn the life lessons of the importance of having a relationship with God and discover how God sees a prophet in each one of us. During this worship series, we'll be introduced to several prophets from the Old Testament, both the major prophets and also few what we call the minor prophets. A prophet is defined as someone who hears messages from God and shares or tells those messages to others. This series will incorporate different modes of communication used over time for people to share their messages. In today's time and age, we like things to be easy, don't we? Right? As a matter of fact, our society is driven by ease and convenience. Staples had made easy its tagline. It has a series of ads in which mountains of organizational office tasks are decimated by a smart, efficient business manager who uses the red easy button and says, "That was easy." From fast food to online banking and speed dating, we want things to be quick and easy. If a task is too cumbersome or time consuming, we shy away from it and look for alternatives. Handwritten notes have given way to quick emails. Leisurely phone conversations have been overtaken by instant messages or short texts. We are getting used to easy and quick TV dinners. In India, we used to have what we call as easy chairs. So comfortable. And as soon as we sit and relax, it makes us lazy and sleepy. And we used to fight for these easy chairs. And here we call them recliners. At the same time, however, if something seems to be too easy, we don't trust it. It's a mixed message, isn't it? We want an easy, uncomplicated life, but life ain't easy. Worthwhile victories are hard won. When important things materialize too quickly, we are suspicious. After all, isn't the good stuff in life better if it is slow, made from scratch and not rushed? Easy sometimes implies cheap, flimsy, and half-hearted. The easy answer is rarely the one that the professor wants. The easy cure is elusive for doctors and patients. The market offers so many easy fixes to common problems today. The truly good thing is worth the wait and the extra effort. This is a sort of paradox that we find in today's reading from 2 Kings. The story of Naaman and the prophet Elisha and King Aram, the king of Israel, and the little slave girl. the key in this whole story. Naaman is offered an easy solution to his problem, but the larger implications mean a life of faith that is not as easy as it seems. Naaman is a powerful man. He got the king's backing, and he had these soldiers and chariots from Syria come to Israel. He thought he would get a warm, great, pompous welcome. With musics like that. But he didn't have anything. And he was sent to this prophet's house, and the prophet didn't even come out from his couch. In one of his conquests, a little girl was secured who ended up being the servant of Naaman's wife. And she witnessed Naaman's misery as well as the challenge that his wife and servants had in caring for this man during his moments of discomfort. And the little girl offered a reference. She knew a prophet. She knew that her master back home could cure Naaman. And as I just mentioned, Naaman had plenty of political experience in the realm of international relations. It would make sense to invite the king Aram to assist him in securing this special service. And the king agrees to send a letter to the king of Israel, who ultimately throws a fit. He thought the king of Syria is trying to pick up a fight. And Elisha, the prophet, hears of this fit and sends the king a word of comfort. He says, "Let him come to me that he may learn that there is a prophet in Israel." It is done. The king sent many gestures of exquisite kindness. But prophets like Naaman, who are settled in their call and assured in their work, are not easily swayed. When Naaman arrives and is not even greeted by the prophet, because as I just said, there was no state dinner, no pomp, no circumstance, nothing. He just sends his servant outside to Naaman and he says, "Go to the river Jordan and wash yourself in that 7 times. Dip into these waters of Jordan 7 times and you will be healed." And Naaman, who was expecting more, this was pretty much all he got. And he felt insulted. This was insulting to Naaman. It was very simple, easy. The prophet didn't even come out, didn't even look at him, didn't even look at his disease, didn't even touch him, didn't even do anything. He just sends out his servant. But when you are really sick, there isn't much time for pride, right? Naaman, who was going away, was encouraged by one of his servants. And later he got down and dipped in the pool, probably feeling ridiculous. But that feeling didn't last long, as his rough, scaly skin was renewed and restored to the texture of a little boy's skin. Naaman's cure is easy, like in our common conversations, we are used to saying this easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? His cure was like that. It was so easy. Much like the story of faith for many of us, the difficult part for Naaman comes in humbling himself to submit to this cure and in allowing himself to be changed by this experience. His pride, his arrogance was stopping him to obey this simple command. Many times in our lives, we end up and we stay in that state of arrogance and pride by not accepting certain simple things that will have drastic, tremendous, spectacular difference in our lives, both physical, spiritual, and also communal. Naaman, once he dips into the faith that is available to him, he emerges out of it as a believer and as a cleansed person. In crossing the boundary of pride and arrogance and unbelief, he crosses over from unbelief to belief, from arrogance to humility, and from hopelessness to faith. Many times we stop taking that one step that allows us to experience God's miracles in our lives. Two, the more important thing in this story is the change came from within once he obeys. The arrogance of the soldier then turned into gratitude. He emerges a new man, reborn and renewed. Naaman had a change of heart in the face of his cure. His conversation challenges us in two ways. Do we see God's miracles in our lives? Do they change us and give us faith? Like Naaman, we need to look with hope and be open to the power of God. And the question that we need to ask ourselves, and the question that I encourage ourselves to carry forward into our life is that, and ask ourselves, when have you seen the power of God working in ways that surprised you? And what happened? Dear friends, our text this morning is about obedience. Our text and the story of the prophet teaches us and encourages us that God sometimes sees a prophet in us to bring change and transformation in others. This text is also about recognizing the voice of God in the voices of others. Naaman had little reason to listen to Elisha, except that he listened to the voice of this refugee girl whom he made a slave and a servant in his house. Therefore, what does it take to hear the voice of God? To whom do we listen? Today, as a sign of solidarity and of faith, we can lift up collectively and individually the brokenness of the world in which we live. We can lift up the sick and the suffering in our midst and invite the healing Spirit and the transforming Spirit to guide us into the paths of wholeness and strength and faith, renewed faith. The first stage on our journey with the prophets is one of obedience and the willingness to hear the voice of God sometimes through the voices of others. The story of Elisha and the story of Naaman teaches us that this important spiritual practice of obedience and willingness and submitting to the voice and will of God in our lives, so that our lives may be healed, our bodies may be transformed, our faith may be renewed. May God guide us in our spiritual journey now and always. Amen.